Hey, welcome back to the Gilbertson Aero Factory. Today is Monday, the 14th of August, 2023. Late afternoon, I got most of my chores done, so it does look like I'm gonna get a little bit of work done on the plane today before I head off on my trip tomorrow. Very simple work today. Probably won't take me more than a half an hour to complete it, but I said that I do a video for every build day, so that's that video for this build day. Not much to talk about. I'll tell a little bit about what's going on when we get into the time-lapse portion of the video. So other than that, let's just build an airplane.
Okay, this should be an interesting one, sort of, for me. I'll try to get this in one take with the voiceover, but the work is really simple and straightforward. I know that I said that the leading edges are done, and they're done. These are the splice joints, and I consider those a separate part. And adding these nut plates could happen later. They don't have to happen before the leading edges are attached to the main spar. But it's a very simple and straightforward task. So before I start rambling about other things, my process is when I'm working with nut plates is basically just to get all of them loaded onto whatever I'm fastening them to by putting a cleco in one side. So you'll see me go through all of these. I think there are 14 in each of these splice joints, so 28 in total between the two of them. And then I'll get into the riveting of that. But since we have a little bit of time to talk here and the work is pretty straightforward and nothing exciting going on there, there's some other things that we can discuss. One of the viewers sent me a message regarding the flickering or the sort of gray ghost bars that kind of scroll up from bottom to top in some of my previous videos about a GoPro having an anti-flicker setting. I tried that, and you basically have two options, 60 hertz or 50 hertz. Here in the United States, we're on 60 hertz, and so if you set the anti-flicker setting to 60 hertz, it will work its way around that flicker. And I thought, well, maybe because different frame rates, and then I'm speeding this up with time lapse and whatnot, maybe if I tried 50 hertz, well, so when you switch it to 50 hertz, you see the flicker immediately, like just in real time as you're recording, you can see it on the back of the GoPro camera. So I'll be curious to see how this one turns out. So I just went back to 60 hertz, 24 frames or 23.976 frames. This is not sped up by a factor of 2,000. This is, or 20 times. This is sped up 3 times, which you can probably tell. This is almost slow motion compared to most of the videos that I post. So anyways, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I started shooting in 4K versus 1080. The reason for that is 1080 is, I think, perfectly clear, except that on the GoPro with the wide angle lens, the final image doesn't look very good, in my opinion. So the final product, when I do 4K with the GoPro, is just a much cleaner image. I think that the final product shooting 1080 looks a lot lower quality once it finally makes it onto the TV screen. So this, what you're looking at right here, is 1080 because my DSLR camera that I use to shoot my stand-ups and whatnot, that's the maximum resolution on that. So anyways, that's kind of boring stuff, but just by way of explanation, because I am a chronic over-explainer. So getting into the riveting of this stuff here, you saw me switching the yoke on my squeezer. This is the so-called no-hole squeezer. So you have the ram, you can put a die in, but if you look at the top of the yoke, there's not a hole there to put a die in there. It's just flat. In applications like this, it's really great. It's got a thinner nose so it can reach in more places. So if you're doing flush rivets, this works really great for that. So on the ram, I put the widest flush die on there, which is probably like 3/4 of an inch. It's a pretty large diameter. It just makes it easier because you don't. It's a little bit more forgiving, I suppose. You don't have to be as precise as you would be using a narrower die, and you can get away with it in this situation. Another advantage to the no-hole yoke, or some would consider it an advantage, is it's not a very deep yoke, and because of that, it doesn't flex as much. A yoke that has a really deep reach will flex a lot because that's a long arm that is absorbing that 3,000 pounds of force when it closes. So anyways, this is the ideal tool for this particular application. Going back to, I'll put a link to the tools video or maybe a card here in this video. If you go back and look at that, I have 3 different yokes, but in the beginning, if you're like me and you order the kit from Cleveland Aircraft Tools for the RV-8, it will come with a pretty standard yoke with the 3-inch reach, but you will find pretty quickly that you're going to want more than that. So I have 3 yokes and I use all of them. It'd be, I think, pretty difficult to do this without a selection of yokes to work with. A couple minutes ago, if you were paying attention to what was happening on the screen, you saw me start to put in some rivets and really quickly change my mind. I'd forgotten that these were all meant to be OOPS rivets, those NAS 1097 rivets. So the first couple that I tried to load up into the holes, they didn't fit right. And then, I remembered that these ones I countersunk with the Avery deburring tool so that they would fit the OOPS rivets. They were never going to fit the regular AN 426 rivets. So, boy, this is pretty simple work. But speaking of work that's not going to be simple, and just something that I was puzzling over when I was driving last night, once these things in the not too distant future end up being placed on the main spars, which you see right behind me there, and that portion of the main spar, which is right behind me that has the lightning holes in it, once these leading edges go on there, the ribs, the flange of the ribs, the aft flange of the ribs needs to be riveted to that main spar, the web of that main spar. But the skin is all closed up. And so I'm thinking, I'm following the sequence of the instructions, but man, like how the hell am I supposed to get a bucking bar in there, in those middle ribs, and get that riveted on? Well, 2 things. One, the ribs themselves have pretty large lightning holes, so I can reach in from one end or the other as far as my arm will allow me to place the bucking bar in there. And then also, if you look at the, well, now I just changed camera angles, but you can see the large lightning hole right there in that rib. I didn't mean to show it to you, but that's how it turned out. But also, now that you're looking at the main spar right there, there are some lightning holes, not for the whole length of the leading edges, but at least for a portion, and probably the most difficult portion. I might be able to pop my hand up through one of those lightning holes to get at the closest rib that I'm working on. So I guess that's a solution, but it is going to be awkward, and I think Larry Kitson kind of teased me about that or warned me about it in a comment in yesterday's video. Now the fun part comes, riveting those to the main spar. That's going to be a challenge, and it not only is that an awkward reach, but you have to use the double offset rivet set, which is also super awkward. But I'm going to try something that I learned probably on Van's Air Force that I didn't do before. The double offset, and we'll show it again when we get to it, but it's a long rivet set for universal head rivets that has a double bend in it so you can be offset of the piece that you're working on, but it tends to spin once you start riveting. So I'm going to try a method that I've seen other people use where they apply tape around the whole thing so that it keeps it more or less in the same position. relative to the gun for whatever you're trying to do. So we'll give that a shot when we get to it. So this riveting is super simple. Just, working with the squeezer is great. It's not difficult to keep these flush. Nonetheless, I think that there was still one rivet that I wasn't happy with that didn't sit as flush as I wanted to. So you'll see me here in the next couple of minutes in the video busting out the implements of shame and drilling out and resetting that one rivet. A note on that, oops rivets, the factory head of the oops rivets don't have that little tiny dimple in them the way the N426 rivets do. And so using the mechanical punch to, if you're unfamiliar, when it's time to drill out a rivet, you want to use a punch to just create a little bit of a mark in there that the drill bit can grab onto so it doesn't wander when you start drilling into it. That was a little bit tricky with the oops rivets. There's not really a spot there to do that. Nonetheless, we got it done. So anyways, the work turned out pretty well. But yeah, working with the squeezer, if you are unfamiliar, is pretty dang easy. All you need to do is, at least with like the squeezer I have and probably most of the builders that you watch, that ram is adjustable. You can turn it to it's sort of inside that mechanism. It's threaded, so you can turn it so you can change the gap without changing different rams. It's very simple to do. You just need to know what the gap is for a particular size rivet. And for an AN 426 3-3.5, it's an eighth of an inch gap. And when I very first started doing this, I would bust out calipers and try to carefully measure that gap. And after a while, you kind of know what an eighth of an inch looks like. And you also kind of know what a little bit more than an eighth of an inch looks like. And so what I do, and I'm sure most people who have been building for more than a week or two, is you just get close to it, maybe a little bit over what you think that it's supposed to be, squeeze the first rivet, see what the result is, and then adjust from there. Just a little bit of trial and error, but then the results are perfectly consistent all the way through. There's that. You can't tell from this angle for a number of reasons. Resolution, focus is on the wrong spot, and others. You can't tell why I wanted to remove that rivet. But basically, it wasn't sitting completely flush, or at least not flush enough for my taste. So that's it. So anyways, we will get through this right here. Tomorrow I'll be taking off to California just for a couple of days to take care of some business. I'll be back, I think, Thursday night, and then Friday or Saturday, I'll get busy doing a billion. Is it a billion or 1.3 billion countersinks on that main spar? Yeah. So here's what it looks like when it's done. That was episode 92. See you next time.